Day 1156 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 945,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,060 in the past day. Then as for hardware, 3 tanks, 5 APVs, 49 artillery, and 1 multiple launch rocket system. With that detonation on full display, as this loaded Russian grad lost its sense of reality after a precise FPV strike in the Donetsk region. Then headed across to the Russian map with a considerably larger than average UAV one-way attack drone flurry of strikes seen to date. In fact, reported to be the biggest wave on record. UAVs flew north and east, and with Crimea really getting the drone treatment. According to Russian monitoring channels, arrivals were reported at the Kurovsky military airbase, and then not far away, the Crimean bridge was immediately closed, certainly due to allowing for sufficient air defense measures to be deployed. Additionally, Russian monitoring channels reported that launches of either UAV or missiles were noticed from Ukraine's Odessa direction towards the occupied peninsula. Strong explosions were also heard at Klushevo of the Simferopol district, and Stary Krim was also reported to feel the heat of explosions as well. Further to that, and to lands less travelled in recent times, as air defense activity, including gunfire and explosions, were reported near the North Crimean Canal. Local channels claimed all shootdowns, but locals reported to say that the number of blasts far exceeded any potential for complete interceptions. Oh, then added to that, Saki airfield was also reported to be subjected to powerful explosions, with locals suggesting a possible strike into an area that includes radar facilities and more. Then beyond Crimea, Ukraine's general staff confirmed a precision strike on a Russian drone production plant over 1,000 kilometers from the border, a location that was originally designed to be out of Ukraine's reach, but situated close enough to the Russian supply chain infrastructure to make the facility viable. However, this location, and these days, is well within Ukrainian UAV range. The facility is also said to produce large volumes of Russia's Shahed-type UAVs daily, with exact damage for this latest strike that occurred on April 23 yet to be determined. Then headed across to Kursk for a moment, where Ukrainian forces repelled 22 Russian assaults in the past day, maintaining defensive positions. Also seen was a Ukrainian FPV drone destroy a Russian APC near the village of Aleshnya. As can be seen here, moments later another quadcopter arrived with a full charge and nothing much to do but admire the wreckage. It surely turned back to its operator to fight another day. Then headed across on the map very north to some 98 kilometers or 60 miles southeast of Moscow at Columna, where some brief reports emerged about an attack at the JSC Scientific and Production Corporation. The main specialization of the enterprise is man-portable air defense missile systems, anti-tank missile systems, operational tactical missile systems, and active defense systems, leading to what might have been a hit on a high-value military target. Then on the map, and headed slightly back in time to Vladimir on April 22nd, northwest of Moscow, for an event that I showed at the end of my last video, as a massive series of explosions rocked Russia's 51st GRAU ammunition depot, triggering a catastrophic detonation that engulfed the 502-hectare facility, and one of Russia's largest ammunition depots. The arsenal stores an estimated 105,000 to 264,000 tons of munitions, including Iskander, Tokyu, and Kinzhal missiles, as well as artillery shells and anti-aircraft missiles, for an event that led to secondary detonations continuing into the night, with projectiles landing as far as 8 to 10 kilometers away. Now, the Russian Ministry of Defense attributed the incident to a safety protocol violation during munitions handling, while some other reports suggest that the incident was likely caused by a Ukrainian drone strike during the unloading of the munitions from railway cars, citing the arsenal's vulnerability during this very munitions unloading. which is quite comparable to a similar attack on the 107th GRAU Arsenal in Toporetsk back in September of 2024. Now, after this event occurred on the afternoon of April 22nd, the fire raged into the following day, and as of now, satellite imagery from NASA firms data shows persistent thermal hotspots, especially near the railway platforms and storage bunkers, which goes some way to suggest more recent secondary detonations. Then headed across into the main map, into the Toretsk direction, and slightly further away, with some Russian incremental advances reported around Tarasivka, Nelipivka, and Toretsk itself, a location that also saw the Donetsk Police Rifle Battalions wipe out Russian troops in close quarters combat as part of a separate event. For this situation, small enemy groups tried creeping toward Ukrainian positions only to be met face first. Then to the south of Donetsk, as the AFU successfully carried out an operation destroying a Russian logistics vehicle loaded with ammunition. Also on the map, Ukrainian soldiers from the 35th Marine Brigade attacked and destroyed a Russian MTLB, then seen somewhere in the east a damaged Russian 2A65 Mr. B towed howitzer, as shown from the Russian perspective, where it looks like the ammunition supplying tow vehicle itself was really the one that copped the brunt of the attack. Also seen on the map, a Ukrainian tank, a Leopard 2, in for repairs, with the tank surviving after receiving over half a dozen Russian strikes that attempted to destroy the MBT. German engineering, I suppose. Now to head all the way across to Poland with an E-3 Sentry AWACS plane providing overhead radar coverage across parts of Ukraine. The plane's radar could theoretically cover a significant portion of western and central Ukraine, but not the entire country due to the curvature of the earth and terrain limitations. Now, estimating conservatively, it might cover 40 to 50% of Ukraine's airspace, and doing so helps provide airborne early warning and control, enhancing situational awareness and coordination, helping protect Ukraine against Russian aircraft, airspace violations, and missiles and drones, ground threats including some troop movements, and the identification of enemy radar placements, aiding Ukrainian targeting of high-value assets. Now, headed across to the news, as Russia launched 70 missiles and 145 drones on Kyiv overnight, becoming one of the largest attacks on Kyiv to date, as Russian ballistic missiles and drones shattered the pre-dawn silence in a deadly attack, hitting at least 5 neighborhoods, with at least one, Shevchenkivsky, a centrally located district and often considered part of Kyiv's broader downtown area. Essentially, we're seeing a ballistic missile attack in a populated region of the capital. Zelensky responded to the devastating missile strikes on Kyiv with defiance, calling the attack, quote, one of Russia's most complex and brazen assaults yet, with Zelensky also directly linking it to Moscow's attempts to pressure the United States. The Ukrainian president also took a defiant tone and stressed that any ceasefire would require Russia to end its mass strikes, as Ukraine's patience was wearing thin, and had also declared that sitting at the negotiating table with such hostile aggressor forces was already a significant compromise for Ukraine among the many other concessions that it has already made. And so events like these are precisely why Ukraine needs additional Patriot air defense systems, very capable systems in guarding against the threat of Russian ballistic missile attacks. Ukraine ideally requires somewhere between 17 and 25 of these fully operational systems to be dispersed and cover all of the large population centers of their country. Ukraine currently has 7, with so far the US and Germany having provided 3 each, plus 1 from Romania and 1 partial system from the Netherlands. And clearly, from these latest events, Ukraine needs these Patriots. Meanwhile, as for a US framework proposal presented in Paris and discussed in London, which called for Ukraine to recognize or accept Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea, and for an agreement that would accept de facto Russian control over roughly 20% of eastern territories and abandon NATO membership aspirations in exchange for a ceasefire and sanctions relief for Russia. With that proposal, which has amounted to Zelensky firmly rejecting the ceding of Crimea and other territories, emphasizing in his April 24 address that Russia's attacks, including the deadly strike on Kyiv, failed to disrupt Ukraine's diplomatic push. He insisted on a full, unconditional ceasefire, rejecting any deal resembling surrender or a frozen conflict, noting that Ukraine is, in fact, pushing for a US proposed 30-day unconditional ceasefire, which was first announced back on March 11th. It almost feels like in 2025, standing up to aggressor tyrant nations is getting more difficult. But if you're going through hell, keep going. Winston Churchill. Meanwhile, from the Kremlin angle, because it doesn't seem that Ukraine was the only one with concerns about this proposal, because Russian officials rejected aspects of Trump's reported peace plan, likely relating to a lack of restrictions on Ukraine's defense forces' size, but also likely related to the suggested involvement of European peacekeeping forces in some capacity, and security guarantees from European nations, which of course is designed to secure a long-lasting peace. So far, it seems, Russia has ultimately not been willing to make any concessions except to say that they will halt military operations after they receive all of the Ukrainian territory that they demand. And yet, halting military operations is far from a concession, but rather a necessity from both sides after an agreement has been made. Needless to say, it's not much of a concession at all. And so, being that we're looking at a deadlock to ceasefire or peace deals at this current juncture, I'll head across to a section of this video where the only compelling arguments that can be made right now are in battle. So headed across to a Ukrainian hardware news update, as more innovations can be seen with Ukrainian drone technology. This time we see an FPV simulator for AFU training, which includes such features as flying under the effects of electronic warfare, and with targeting goals of vehicles and equipment, which must be hit in vulnerable spots, or the targeting is considered unsuccessful. Helicopter targets are also in the mix for this training simulator. Then to another hardware update. Seen here is how Ukrainian radio repeater drones can adjust the set angle of the antenna relating to the horizon within plus or minus 30 degrees rotation in both automatic and manual modes. This directional integrity allows for a stronger signal to be received by an FPV for longer range and increased jamming resistance. Got to love this innovation. Also, to add to the mix for this type of news, seen was a Ukrainian naval drone design with an updated twist. For instance, this such unmanned naval vessel unleashes a combination of fixed-wing and quadcopter drones, becoming a platform that could create an updated atmosphere of smaller aerial threats within Russian-occupied Crimea. Then headed across to a quick and mysterious oddity to round off this video today, as a news story from Russian state media outlet TASS is reporting that Russian men are disappearing. More specifically, Russian men aged between 25 to 45, who are now the most frequently reported missing demographic in Russia. This finding emerged after an organization began detailed statistical tracking, challenging the prior assumption that children and the elderly were the most common missing persons, which is always the case, right? And yet, after the Russian organization completed their research, somehow during the summary phase there appeared to be a change in tone, as they then claimed that this hefty uptick in 25 to 45-year-old missing persons, this trend, is that the cause is primarily due to some sort of health-related issues, such as strokes occurring at younger ages all of a sudden. No mention of men getting snatched up for the SMO, getting picked up off the streets, which has literally occurred before. There's more than enough reports on that one. But nope, none of that. Instead, just an instant case of men in this particular age bracket who are typically at much lower risk for strokes and the like, is what accounts for this strange new statistical anomaly. Okay, if you say so, Russia. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, comment, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. I really do. Cheers.